Nadine, thank you so much for being here on the podcast today to share a little bit about your story. I'm very happy to have you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's always a wonderful opportunity to share what's happening in this crazy mind of mine.
Yeah, crazy minds of everyone, really, let's face it. I don't know who
Yes,
can say they
yes.
don't have a crazy mind on some level, with all honesty, but
Right. That's true.
yeah. So I wanted to jump right in. As you know, this podcast is all about starting over stories and people sharing the lessons that they have learned through adversity, basically
Hmm.
difficult, often unexpected challenges that they've faced in their life and what they have learned through that. So, in
Yeah,
the interest of, yeah, keeping it on brand with this podcast,
of
I wanted
course.
to ask you, what are, that first come to mind at least, three significant challenges that you have faced? That could be
Mm.
some form of adversity or a big pivot potentially in your life that you weren't
Yeah.
anticipating. Are there three examples of that you could share in
Oh, I
summary?
think I think there's probably about 300, but I won't bore your listeners with all 300. But I want to start with a meta perspective that I hope can guide everyone as they listen to this and they hold this in their hearts as they think through this, listening to this. The wisdom is in the wound.
Mm.
And I was raised by a lovely English mother who always told me just when you think you're losing your mind, you're actually gaining it. So I think that a lot of times we frame these chaotic or painful suffering times as being bad or disastrous. And of course, they do feel horrible. And yet, just because it feels bad doesn't mean it is bad.
That is very powerful. Wisdom in the
Yeah.
wound. That is
Yeah.
very, very true.
The wisdom are in the wounds. And so my first one, of course, is my ex-husband. I mean, he was a maniac. I was young. Not everybody knows, but a movie was made about our lives called The Wolf of Wall Street. That was really a very painful time in my life. Yet my relationship with Jordan, who is the Wolf of Wall Street, that I met when I was 22 and fell madly in love with him, and we became trauma bonded, was that I was with him for 8 years. And when I left him, my work was to look at me. I had spent my whole relationship looking at him. So I think the first offer of hope that I can give to your listeners is when you're in a tough relationship, look at yourself. You know, don't focus on the other person. The second time that I had was when my son was hospitalized with spinal meningitis, and he was already born with two holes in his heart. And I remember looking at my mother and I said, Mom, I know people have hard times. This isn't cancer, it's not AIDS. And she looked at me and she said, No, this is hard. I think to also say to yourself, this is hard. This is hard and I can get through.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Really, really listening to that. And another third time that I had was when I had breast cancer, when I was 39 years old. And it was very, very challenging. And yet it really forced me to go back to my belief in or surrendering into divine ordinance, or that there's something larger than me.
Yeah. Okay. And you really felt that in that.
Oh, I really felt that. And
Okay.
I actually had a double mastectomy, worked my way through it. It all went really well. I didn't need chemo or radiation. So those were three, very hard moments for me. And yet they taught me things.
Mm.
One taught me to go back to surrender into something bigger than me. I can't have control. One taught me to say it's hard. It's okay to say it's hard. I'm suffering, and to have compassion for myself. And the first one taught me that, you know what? Your relationship with yourself is just as important as your relationship with another person. So why don't you work on that?
It's so true. And you know what? I can totally hear that you're a therapist in what you're saying right now. Your first comment about look at yourself in the relationship if you're in a tough relationship. That totally reminds me of when a counselor first said to me when I was going through a difficult separation, like, how about we look at what made you get into a relationship like this?
Right.
And I was like, oh, no, what are you
No,
talking
I want
about?
to say focus on him, on her, on them. Yes,
Yeah,
of
of course,
course.
because at that time I was like, I need some goddamn validation.
Right.
But actually, but actually now with the retrospect, I mean, that's it. That is so it. It's all about the awareness journey, isn't it?
Yes.
Out of those experiences that you're describing, the lessons that you say you learned through that, the surrender and
Yes.
so forth, would you say that they were lessons that you particularly needed to learn yourself? Not just lessons that we would all benefit from, but that they were lessons that somehow you needed to look at particularly on your path?
I would say that answer has that question has two answers. Yes. I do believe that we're all in the classroom of Earth for our own educational experiences. And yet, I do believe that there was an archetypal theme to my messages, such as relationships are your teacher, suffering is inevitable, have compassion for yourself, and surrender into something bigger.
Mm.
So, yes, I think they came to me at the right times through the appropriate people or the appropriate experiences. Yet, I do think that, as Carl Jung said, you know, there's not that many experiences in life. We all kind of have the same ones with the same
Mhm.
messages. So
Mhm.
it's like both things in life. It's both. It's my personal and collective.
Mm. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective on that front. I can see that a lot. And I think that's why when we're, listening to people's podcasts and other people's stories, for example, we can see ourselves in it because
Of
irrespective of the
course.
factual differences in the experiences we've lived in our life, the underlying messages and themes are
Yes,
somewhat synonymous or similar in
exactly.
some way.
We're not that special.
The
I
narcissist
think,
would like to believe that though, so
right. I mean, we're not that unique. I mean, we're unique in what we can bring to the world, but there are archetypal themes that haunt or drive all of us.
yeah. So tell me a little bit about little Nadine. Let's go there first. What was she like?
Oh,
Where did she grow up? What brought
oh,
her
she
joy?
was just a happy little bugger and full of life and full of vitality and skipped everywhere and had a pretty magical childhood.
I
I mean, there
wasn't
was
expecting that.
neglect. Yeah, I was not abused. My parents never told me you're ugly, you're fat, you're never going to amount to anything, you're not worth anything. No, my parents were like, you're beautiful, you're smart, you're amazing. And, we don't have that much attention for you because they were 19 and 20 when they had me. So,
Okay.
and it was 1967 in the United States. The next year, Bobby Kennedy died. For all of your young people, they probably don't know this, but it was a time similar to what we're dealing with COVID. Bobby Kennedy got shot, Martin Luther King died. There was a lot of political unrest in the country. Their friends were going off to the Vietnam War, but they were incredibly positive people.
Mm.
So my life was fun. I mean, I grew up poor on welfare. My mother left my father when I was 6, yet I was happy.
Mm. So going to your point about being on welfare, was there ever any shame or sense of going without, negative comparisons that you made? I mean, you grew up in New York,
Yeah.
right? In
In
Brooklyn, New
Brooklyn,
York.
in Brooklyn, yeah.
One thing, and this might be from complete ignorance from me because I actually haven't personally been to New York City before,
Yeah.
but the impression that I have is that there's quite a strong contrast and in terms of wealth.
Yeah.
In that could be
Yeah.
something, the relative
That where
deprivation.
I grew up in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, we were all the same. There
Yeah.
was no internet, there was no social media. Um, yeah, we were all the same. So there wasn't, I never felt, I mean, I felt a longing probably that I didn't understand, but I never felt like, oh, I'm less than this person. But I
Mm.
think that had more to do less with things and more to do with that my mother was validating of my emotions and my internal world, because those are where the riches lie.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
where the richness of life is. Somebody saying to you, I hear you. My mother would talk to me about my emotions for 5 hours. I mean, God bless her. She was really very smart in that way because she had not had that. So then once I went to New York City, when I met Jordan and I met all these wealthy men, that's when I knew that I really didn't have material wealth, but I had something.
So then that was because you obviously met him later. So that was in your early 20s that
Yes,
you were
that was in
exposed.
my early
So would
20s.
you
Yeah.
say that potential contrast in wealth and so on wasn't prevalent in your childhood? That wasn't something you
Not
were
at all.
cognizant of? No.
No, nobody gave a
No.
shit. I cared
So
like about bikes and playing softball, and we were Charlie's Angels on roller skates. No,
that sounds like great fun.
it was fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you went on afterwards to go into modeling.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that because what my perception of the modeling industry, especially at the time that you were doing it. So this was this 1980s,
Yes, not
90s?
late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess there's been a whole new development in the modeling industry now in terms of more body positivity and embracing different shapes and sizes. But I was
Yes.
wondering whether there was your experience in the modeling industry was in some ways damaging to self-esteem or
Yeah, you know what the ironic part is? You're born the way you're born.
Mhm.
I wish that I had some, like, the way I look, the way my body is, I had no control over that. That had to do with my parents' DNA. So I literally became a model only to make money, because I needed to make money and I did grow up poor. And then when I started to go on go-sees, as we called them back then, you would go on 10 to 12 go-sees a day for commercials, print, or whatever. Oh, of course, I was like, I'm the ugliest person in the world. Nobody's choosing me.
Mhm.
But yet I still showed up and I did it. I was resilient because I think my mother had loved me. And, I got some commercials and some reward in that way. But I can't say that I've fully ever valued myself on the way I look.
Mm.
I wouldn't
That's
have got my doctorate if I did that.
no, of course. No, and I think as you've stated,
Right?
that's clearly a testament to your parents as well.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
yeah, the frame that you had. I'm asking this because what I was going to lead into was your relationship with Jordan. And
Yeah.
in my experience, people who get into relationships with people that, could have personality disorders and so
Yep.
forth, there's usually something lacking personally, like a wound that you're carrying, whether that's low
Yes.
self-esteem, low self-worth, naivety, like something there that could be manipulated and easily exploited. And
Yes.
uh, and I'm wondering whether there was any element in that for you.
I think that, no, I think for me, it was first of all growing up on welfare and having a father that was neglectful financially and emotionally and spiritually and physically. I was looking for a man
Mm.
to provide that for me
Mhm.
because clearly that was a lack. Um, but it wasn't that I honestly knew that at the time. I was just like, oh, he's hot, he's gorgeous, he's wealthy, he's 5 years older than me. We connect, we're both bright. And it felt good.
Mhm.
It was that simple. It felt good. And I believed that Jordan was like me,
Yeah.
that he wanted the same things I wanted. And I believe he did in his own way, but he had his own damaged self that he did not present to me.
No, and did that only show itself much later down the line?
Yes. With me, what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
I ain't no fucking around with that. I'm not ashamed of
I'm sorry,
myself.
this is the New Yorker coming out, I gotta
Mhm.
say.
Well, that's what I mean. But that's the way I
Yeah.
was. Like, what you see
Yeah.
is what you get. I'm not lying. I'm not okay. Maybe did I present? I don't know that I was smarter than I was. I mean, I don't know. Probably, but we all present something. We all present a persona, a mask.
Of course, especially when dating. I mean, let's be
Of
honest. You're
course,
gonna
we all
you're
do
gonna
that.
put your best self on show.
But I think his mask was very different than mine. And that's what seduced me.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the start of your relationship with him then. So you were 23, you met at a party.
We met at a party and my boyfriend had taken me there. Actually, I think I took myself there. I was like, I want to go to this party. I want to go to this party. He's like, why do you want to go to this party? And that's divine ordinance again, right? In a different way. And we went and everybody was very stoned and very inappropriate with me. And I wanted to leave. I didn't feel safe. And we left. As the movie portrays, men were like doing weird things in front of me. I mean, I was a 22-year-old girl, just in like a little t-shirt and shorts. It was not appropriate. And then I guess he liked me. And to a person like that, I'm an object to have, not a person to love. And he pursued me. And I was modeling at the time and struggling and with my own boyfriend and going through my own trials and tribulations of being 22. And then I think what happened was he had got separated from his wife, or so he says. And then we went on a date and I'm like, he was amazing. He's incredibly bright. He's so fun to talk to. I mean, somebody had set us up on a date originally, but then I didn't speak to him for 6 months. And then we went on a date and he was lovely.
So it all became pretty intense pretty quickly.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. And I'm just as much to blame for that as he is.
Well,
I mean, not
yeah.
yeah, I mean, he was like sending flowers and watches and money and I just was like, oh, this guy loves me.
But that surely was exciting.
Oh, it
Right?
was so exciting.
Yeah. And what I am hearing here in your story of growing up on welfare and so on, I mean, surely there must have been some attraction appeal there with the
Of
material wealth and
course.
the
It felt
charm.
safe. It
Yeah.
felt safe. I knew that my mother never once said to me, money will make you happy. Never once. But of course, I'm sure I felt her level of insecurity and unsafety. Right?
And then that was provided to you, I guess, at the start. Am I right in saying?
Oh, at the start.
Yeah.
And he's fun. He's smart. He was sexy. I mean, it wasn't just that. Like, I'm not falling in love with an old clumsy man. No. No. He had a lot of things going on for him aside from as well.
Yeah. So at what point so this was happening around, so you were in your early 20s. I'm curious
Yes,
about
22.
the time frame between actually, so you living this experience yourself and then going to what I would imagine is reliving the experience on some level when this movie happens. Because I don't know if you ever thought that the movie would become such a blockbuster success that
No.
it became. I mean, of course, with the cast that they had, there would be some indication of that. For anyone listening, I don't know if you haven't watched this movie, everyone I know has watched it, but it was right. It was directed by Martin Scorsese. Nadine's ex-partner Jordan was portrayed by Leonardo DiCaprio. Margot Robbie, Jonah Hill. It grossed 400 million apparently at the box office. It was nominated for 5 Oscars. Like, it was the film. It was known. And I can't imagine what it would have been like to have been on the receiving end of that. Like, like knowing that this is a story about your life and your story, and probably it's not portrayed exactly as it happened because they have big creative artistic license. Like, that's something in itself, right? So can you tell me a little bit about this transition, from your relationship to then knowing that a movie is being made about your life, not from your perspective?
Well, yeah, it's a long journey from there to here.
Yeah.
So when Jordan at first had written a book, so it wasn't even a movie first, okay? And he had wrote the book in jail, and I respected him for that. I didn't agree with what he wrote. And again, this is his narrative, yet it was extraordinarily painful to hear about my life that really felt like a great tragedy that almost could have killed me, to become a satire in his book. That was not fun. I cried, I screamed at him, got over it. And then the next situation was he made it into a movie. And that was very, very, very painful. Very painful. But the most important thing that I was concerned about was my children at this point. You know, now it had become bigger than me, and I had to surrender my all my lessons about surrendering and admitting that it's hard and looking at the relationship as something that I could learn from came in handy when it
Yeah.
became a movie. And you know, I am my mother's daughter and I'm a lady of dignity. And I will never, ever lower myself to the standards of anybody else but besides my values. And my values are about honesty, integrity, decency for those that I love. And he fell out of that. That's why I'm not with him. But I had to hold to those values for my children.
Mm.
And I will forever hold those values.
Mm. How old were they at the time that the film was released?
My son was 17, my daughter was 19, very impressionable ages.
Yes. And also very aware. You know, it's not like
Very
they
aware. But luckily, I had never hidden my life with Jordan. I'd always discuss it with him because I am my mother's daughter, and talks about feelings, and he did this and he did that, and I did this. And so they were like, Mom, the movie's coming out. I got a pimple. Mom, the movie's coming out. This girl doesn't like me. Mom, the movie's coming out. I need a dress. And the day actually that the movie came out, it was Christmas Day. My birthday's Christmas Eve. And I actually had Jordan at my house because that's the type of mother I am.
Mm. That says something, because I can't imagine the co-parenting journey would have been the easiest.
No, but you know what? When you decide to become a parent, your children must come first.
Yes.
And you can't say it in words. You have to do it in actions. And I had to surrender, and this was bigger than me. And here's the nice part of it. My daughter's a therapist. My son's a rapper. He's an amazing artist with words. We're all creative people, and we've come out the other side. And I
Well,
think that's the hope.
yes, absolutely. Well, that's it. That's exactly what I'm saying here about tackling, navigating adversity and transforming it into something beautiful and something that doesn't keep you down or behind in life, but using that as a platform to advance yourself further. You know,
Beautifully said. You said that so beautifully.
thank you.
Thank you for saying it better than I did. Because I get tough when I talk about my kids.
Yeah, feisty mama. I feel it. Well, I'm
I
sure it
am
does
a
them a lot of
feisty
good.
mama. Yes.
But one quote I heard from you on another podcast you did was about Jordan writing this book that then got made into a movie. And for you, that was the ultimate form of gaslighting. Can you break that down a little bit for those listening?
Sure. Sure. So, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So, gaslighting is the experience of you having an experience of feeling hurt or sad or seeing it one way, and the person completely switching the narrative, changing the perspective. So, for example, when I was married to Jordan, the biggest fight we ever got into was about his drug addiction. I was crazy about his drug addiction. He was such a severe drug addict. Yet in his book and in his movie, the biggest fights we ever got into was about other women. I could give a shit about other women. I'm not a jealous person. I never poured water in his face. I never, even though I probably should have, I never confronted him about some hooker. So that's what gaslighting is. It's that when someone actually denies your reality, says it didn't happen, says the pain of the reality didn't happen. It's when they just say, no, what are you talking about? That's crazy. Not only didn't happen, that's crazy, or you have no right to feel like that. And so what gaslighting is, though, is actually a double standard. And so my ex-husband, he can write a book, make a movie, but sometimes if I post about him, he gets angry. And another sign of abuse or gaslighting is double standards.
Of course, definitely. And I think the detrimental thing with this gaslighting is it it is so destabilizing. I think people who haven't
Yes.
had that experience cannot fully understand, but it is so, yeah, so incredibly destabilizing because you start questioning yourself. You're abandoning yourself and your boundaries and your values and all these things because you're not that sure. And of course, that's intentionally done, intentionally manipulated, intentionally playing on vulnerabilities and,
Yeah.
and so forth. And it can really, really break somebody down.
Well, it's done to cause self-doubt or cognitive dissonance because a person says they're doing one thing, I'm doing it, I'm making the movie for you and the kids. I don't need the money, the kids don't need any of it. But then it's harmful to you, right? So which one is it?
Mm,
Wait, are you doing it for me or is it harmful to me? Are you doing it harmful? And so it creates this back and forth in your own brain, which, as you say, is very destabilizing and causes self-doubt.
yeah.
And it makes you lose your center.
Yes, definitely. So in that instance, what did you do during that period or thereafter to center yourself, to take some distance,
Yeah.
to nourish yourself internally? Because I can imagine for some time your life became a bit of a whirlwind.
Do you know what? Ironically, it was not that much of a whirlwind when the movie came out. I had done so much work up to that point. I've been in therapy for 20 years. I had done tons of dream work around the movie. I was in school to be a
Dream work?
therapist. Yeah, dream work,
Okay, I've not heard of that. Ah,
dream analysis. Yeah,
okay.
because the school that I went to was very into dream analysis. So I was doing dream analysis. I had done so much work on myself and I was in school. So I think also I had my own career and direction, which actually really centered me to myself. And as long as my kids were okay and I surrendered and I was connected to my core and I have a beautiful relationship with my husband and it all was okay. So I didn't feel cognitive dissonance. I mean, I felt that was gaslighting. And I was angry and I had my feelings about it, but I was constantly processing it. The gaslighting was more in my whole relationship with him.
Yes. Yeah, of course.
I mean, I say the word it gaslighted me, but it was a perpetuation of that. But I was much more well able to handle it, much more resourced to handle it.
Would you say that the relationship was abusive?
My ex-husband?
Yeah.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely.
And in a variety of ways?
Yes, he was emotionally abusive, verbally abusive. The end physically abusive. He kicked me down the stairs.
Mm.
Um, yes, he was very controlling initially. He was like, I'm not going to date you if you're not going to marry me. I'm not going to marry you if you won't have kids. Everything was about threat, intimidation, domination, control, quit modeling. I was like, I don't want to quit modeling. I'm making this much money. Quit modeling. You don't need it. Oh, yeah. There was, that's the thing about psychological violence. It's not so obvious to other people because
No.
it does include coercive control, intimidation, threats, domination, isolation, alienation from people that you love.
Mm. And that was largely your experience, even the
Yes.
isolation from people that you were close to. Did he encourage you to stay at home with the kids, to not have your own work or?
He was more him was domination and control. He wanted to say when I did, what I did, who I did it with, intimidation, threats, isolation. Yeah, he wanted to control who I was with, but luckily I did have a lot of friends, and also separation from myself. I mean, even in the book, I'm a lifelong learner. So when I was married to him, we were buying expensive furniture. I went to school for interior design. I went to learn about wine. I went to learn about flowers and stuff, and he would make fun of me. But I was like, wait, I didn't grow up wealthy. I need to learn about these things so that we have good things and we understand them. But there was a lot of that belittling and degradation from my desire to grow, if that makes sense. So that was really it. was that he definitely he got very controlling, very belittling, and yeah, it just was very cruel, very cruel.
And what point did you really realize that?
Well, I would say 3 years into our relationship, I really realized the control and the manipulation. But at that point, I had already had a daughter. I was pregnant. And so there was not many places to go. And his drug addiction was all consuming for him. And there was nothing I could do about that.
Well, no, of course. With any kind of addiction anyway, that's really a
Right. But
personal
at
gain.
20,
They need to take
right. But at
ownership.
26, I had no idea. You have to remember, I'm 54 now. So 44, 34, 24. 30 years ago, nobody was talking about trauma bonds, narcissism. This was not in the zeitgeist. I was navigating this all on my own.
Yeah, exactly. And I was actually going to lead into a little bit about the significant professional change that you made in your life and later in life, because I guess now in what work you are doing professionally, you really have a theoretical frame to
Yes.
to be able to detect patterns of behavior, understand people's actions
Yes.
and so on that you probably didn't have at the time.
No.
Did your experience in your relationship really influence you moving into this space?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was at 38. I was I was in the garment business and I started to meditate a lot because that's what we do in LA. And I was like, I'm going to go back to school to be a therapist because therapy changed my life. There's no ageism in it. And I just went back to school to be a therapist, help people through the darkest times in their lives and pull them through. Then over time, as my work evolved, it got more into these dysfunctional relationships. But that was not my original intent. My original intent was only to offer to people what therapy had done for me, which was save me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it really does. I'm such a big advocate of therapy, or even if people can't afford to have a therapist for whatever reason, I'm like, there are so many resources out there these days to
Yes.
be able to self-heal in many respects. But let's go a little bit
Yes.
now into the specifics of your professional change, and taking that big leap. You're 39, am I correct in going
Yes.
back to
Yes.
university?
Mhm. And that's what I offer to people is it's never too old. I actually only had a year and a half of my, or 2 years of my undergrad. I had to do a year and a half of, or 2 years of undergrad. Then I went and got my master's. You don't have to get a doctorate to do what I do in the States, at least. You have to have a master's. And I did that. And it was wonderful. And my kids were going to leave anyway. I didn't really realize the impact that would have, but they were going to leave. And I had to find myself again. And again, if I go back to my first three things that we started with, relationships or can be our healers and direct us in ways. And Jordan taught me a lot,
Hmm.
that I wanted to help people heal and change and grow.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's like going back to what you said earlier about the wisdom in the wound. And I guess
The
you now live
wisdom
this
in
in
the
your
woods.
daily life in helping other people on that journey. So that must be a very satisfying place to be in.
It's a very satisfying place to be. And then what happened is that there were so many women that were coming to me that were trauma bonded.
Mm.
And so many therapists would blame them and say, you're enabling, you're codependent. And I was like, oh, no, no, no. We have to stop with that story. If someone is that pathological and that smart and has a severe personality disorder and a mood disorder and impulsivity and compulsivity, judges, lawyers, they can't even figure it out. You expect a person who's in love to figure it out?
You tell them.
Stop shaming these people.
Yes, I mean, let's go into that because it's true. I fell into a big kind of internet surf experience when I started realizing that my ex was on this spectrum,
Right.
so to speak, and I had no frame for it whatsoever. It was just like, oh, they're just mean or so and so or manipulative. I had no frame. But then, of course, coming across these resources, I was reading a lot about that. The enabler, the codependent, the empath, and so forth. you have a different perspective, and it's always interesting to hear other
Oh,
people's
I have
perspectives.
such a
So,
different perspective. So let me explain to you because this is what I'm writing about. A pathological lover has one or two or three personality disorders on the cluster B: antisocial, borderline, or narcissism. Plus, they could be a psychopath, psychopathy one or two. The psychopath one is smarter than the psychopath number two, a little bit more vulnerable. Then they're under the dark tetrad umbrella, which is sadism, psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism. So if we put psychopathy and narcissism aside, because we've already dealt with that, they have sadism, they enjoy seeing you hurt, and they have Machiavellianism, which means they're amazing manipulators. Then you say they're impulsive. Then they have a compulsive disorder, such as sex or gambling or drugs. Okay? I've just named a host of things that's taken me years to understand and research. How dare we blame the victim? And I will not allow that to happen.
mm,
And that's what my book's about. I'm not saying we can't take responsibility and accountability, but these guys never do. And they're mostly men, unfortunately. It's not about gender, it's really about mental health.
no, of course.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I will not allow that to happen.
Mm.
Actually, what my researchers taught me is that there's an amazing test in psychology called the Big Five personality test. It tests openness to experience, let's think, extroversion, agreeableness,
Conscientiousness, I think, is on
conscientiousness, and
there.
neuroticism,
And
right?
neuroticism, yeah.
And so women who score very high, such as I do, in conscientiousness and agreeableness, we are prey for these men.
So break that down a little bit more. So agreeableness,
So
that's
what
somebody
that
being
means is
friendly,
like, so
nice.
I'm loyal, I'm trustworthy, relationships are my currency.
Yeah.
I will tolerate things. All I want to be is relational. Agreeableness, again, I am cooperative, I'm compliant. I have my own opinions, and yet I am pro-social. So what happens is that women that score very high in those areas, which I do, those beautiful traits in the hands of the wrong person get turned against you.
Mm.
So what should we tell everybody to stop being pro-social and cooperative and responsible and disciplined so as we can all live in a world with those people? No.
I want you to be my therapist.
Yeah, because I'm very serious about it. I'm very educated about it. This is not me speaking from my bias. This is me speaking from data.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this book, I'm going to show this book to you, The Women Who Love Psychopaths.
Okay.
Dr. Sandra Brown. I mean, I hate her cover. Sandra, we got to work on that. It's not inviting. My friends had to put a book cover on it.
It is for people listening. It's like a
Right.
horrible mask. That's quite
It's
scary.
it's scary. It's scary, but she taught me about it.
Right.
And so it's important for
So
people
what's in
to
this book? So
understand.
women love psychopaths. So what?
So what's in this book is exactly what I explained, is that these pathological lovers have all of these personality traits. And you combine them with these women that have these more pro-social traits, because she did tons of research that was out of the domestic violence shelters. Because again, as we spoke about, this sort of abuse is not necessarily physical, it's emotional abuse, it's psychological violence, which is the intentional harm of another person, and it's also aggressive dominance, the need to dominate. And so she really breaks it down. And of course, I'm writing about it and now taking it to a whole crazy place. Because if we go back to the beginning of what your message is about, is that I want to have my suffering make meaning.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're now finding that through your work, through writing a book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm curious in practice. So you were saying, I completely agree, by the way, like let's not blame the victim. Let's not say, okay, let's rein in that empathy and that compassion and that generous heart full of love that you want to share with the world, which is in fact a gift and a treasure that we should value, because we're all seeking happiness. We're all united in that. So why can't we lift these people up more than tear them down to stay safe in perpetual vigilance or something? But in practice, I'm wondering what that looks like. So let's say a boundary setting with somebody, so that you wouldn't be somebody who maybe is listening that has either
Yeah.
been in a relationship like this, or maybe can identify those traits in themselves, which now you're listening to Nadine, you might think, oh, okay, I'm a lot like that. Maybe I should be a little bit vigilant against us,
Yes.
knowing that if I'm dating or so on, that I could be, I could be susceptible to the
You
manipulations
could,
and the charms.
yes, you can be susceptible. And here's the thing. All healthy relationships have boundaries. Once somebody plows through your boundaries, once it's okay, twice, a few times about big things like when to get married, when to have children, something that really interferes with your values. If you keep confronting them and they don't listen, it's a sign. Once you express needs that you have, needs that are true against your values, and somebody dismisses them, no. The third thing is that if someone really hurts you, which again happens in love, the very nature of love is that we will hurt the people we love because they matter too much. That's the very nature. And yet, when you tell somebody you really, really, really hurt me, and they're like, well, wasn't that bad? They're callous or insensitive, run. If they
Yeah.
cannot feel remorse, empathy, or compassion for
Mm.
your pain, no.
Yeah. Mm. And also drawing a distinction there between what could be forced in a fake way for
Oh, yeah.
gain, because that can happen too, and it does happen
Yeah,
regularly.
and I call that antisocial empathy.
Yeah, which yeah.
Somebody can fake it, but over time you will see the cracks because the thing with a pathological lover is their words never match their actions.
Mhm.
The 50th time somebody's words don't match their actions, you have to leave. And what I've discovered with a lot of women, like I also had a very big need to be in control and think that I could handle this and he would, no matter what. No, that's grandiosity on my part. No, I'm not going to, some people, I'm not going to change this person. I am not going to, it's bigger than me. And sometimes love is not enough.
Mm. Mm. I'm wondering now, I recently posted about lessons that I felt like
Mm.
I've learned in my 20s, like reflecting a little bit because I ended up I mean, I'm 29, I have a 4-year-old, I was younger, having a baby than I expected, and all these other things that didn't fit in my life
Yes.
plan that I had for myself. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to uni doing this and this. Of course, now as I'm getting a little bit older and dare I say a little bit wiser, I realize that life isn't like that. And you're always
Right.
going to have some curveballs in there that catch you off guard. But one reflection I had recently was on the power, necessity, and value in being single for a period of time and not
Mm.
rushing into relationships because you're feeling lonely or because you have that desire for connection with another that you
Yes.
might feel so deeply that deprives you of a potentially quite a healing and empowering period in your life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering whether you had anything to say on this and whether even if you were, I guess, in your early 30s, was it when you
Yes. Yes.
separated
Yes.
from Jordan? Whether
Yes.
whether
Yes.
there was a period of, I'm hearing that you went to therapy extensively and you did a lot of work on yourself. And I also heard that you are now with somebody else that you've been with for quite a long time. So
I
I'm
am.
kind of wondering about this,
Yeah.
this
That in
period that you spent,
between.
yeah, the in between and then moving into a new love.
Yeah. The in between time was very painful. Very, very painful. I felt very, very lonely, even though I did want to be without Jordan, even though I had 2 young children. And what really saved me and what the research shows to create secure attachment or a secure sense within oneself is journaling. Journaling really helped me. And what I do with the women, I wish somebody had taught me this, but we all have 3 needs for autonomy, which is psychological freedom, confidence, and relatedness. And so, what are you confident at? What are you good at? Instead of focusing your energy on someone else, what are you good at? What are you interested in? Build that within yourself. And at that time, I had a business. I had a maternity business that I was focused on. And I think that really, really helped me. But make no mistake, even when you leave a person like this, it's painful and it's lonely.
Mm.
But if you could turn the mirror back on you, what do I need? What do I want? What am I interested in? Who am I?
Yeah.
I think that's very, very helpful. Then, of course, having healthy relationships. And then when you do discover who you are, having the balls, as we say in Brooklyn, or the courage to express that, having the courage to face what you fear, having
Yeah.
the courage to approach what you fear actually builds authentic confidence. And if you can take those experiences and tie them into a knot, a ball, you'll grow and you'll meet the right person.
Mm.
And listen, my current husband, oh, we've had our own issues. Of course. It's not like I met him and everything was perfect. No. But the difference between my first husband and my second husband is my second husband is can hear me and he's willing to work on himself.
Yeah.
It's
It
that
says it all.
simple.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been saying to all my girlfriends, I'm like, I'm sorry, but girls, this has got to be like number one on your dating criterion. I do not care about the tall, dark, handsome,
Oh,
wealthy, like, no, no.
no.
Self-aware or willing to be self-aware is
Or
like
willing
number
to like
one.
work on it. Like the first time I met my current husband and I told him something that upset me, and he goes, I hear that. I go, what? You heard me? I nearly fell off my chair. They can hear you, they can love you, but then if they can take that information and insight is not awareness, turn it into action,
Big
do
win.
it.
Yes.
Big win.
Big win. Yeah. So that's the big difference you'd say in terms of your first husband and your second husband. Anything else come to mind? Or is that the like
Well,
number one?
those are the two things. I mean, I definitely marry arrogant, short people. And I laugh about it myself. My husband and I laugh about it right now. And he's like, somebody, I was in an interview and somebody said, who's the number one narcissist you ever turned around? I go, my second husband. So, and he loves it and we laugh about it. But there are men out there that can change. So don't give up hope.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Just in the interest of time, I wanted to go through the last few questions. So I wanted to start by asking, is there something that you used to believe that you no longer believe?
Oh yeah. I thought I had to be perfect or that I was perfect. That was so stupid.
That's exactly, that is
I
literally
was
exactly
so
what someone else
stupid.
said.
I was so stupid. First of all, there's not such, I mean, like there's no such thing as perfect. I don't have to be perfect. That's never happening. That was ridiculous. Yeah. So silly.
I think this is going to be an ongoing theme with my podcast, actually. Like, it's coming up a lot, and I also
Yeah.
identify with it a lot.
Yeah,
I'm
it's so
I'm I'm getting there.
silly.
I'm getting there. Second, you actually spoke about this a little bit before, but maybe you could break it down a bit further. What 5 values do you really identify with and you would like to see more of in the world?
Sure. So the first one is honesty. The second one is humility. The third one is integrity. The fourth one is pro-social behavior. And the fifth one is, what's the fifth one? Love, agape love, love for brothers, love for sisters.
Mm,
Yeah. Love
mm,
for everybody, love for diversity.
yeah.
Yeah.
What is the pro-social behavior? What does that look
Pro-social,
like?
but yeah, pro-social behavior is the opposite of antisocial behavior. So it's the fact that you do things because you want to perpetuate humanity and the goodness in humanity. And you believe you want everyone to feel a sense of happiness and joy and vitality, and that you behave in ways that make that manifest in the world.
Mm, yeah.
Because we're all selfish up to some point, of course. I mean, like, I love my shirt, my stupid necklace. Like, I like material things. I mean, I can't pretend that I don't. But at the end of the day, what drives my behavior is the betterment of humanity, because that's the only thing we have to leave our children, the world. Like, we need evolution for the world to continue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. And lastly, what do you wish your 23-year-old self knew?
Mm. I wish she knew, I wish she knew that she was enough. She was enough.
Mm.
She didn't have to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. She didn't have to write a sonnet. She didn't have to be perfect, just as her own self, as her own being. She was enough.
Yeah. I think we'd
She
all
should,
benefit from knowing a bit more of that as well. It's always
yeah,
this thing that I'm like, can't we learn it a little bit younger? God
I
damn it.
know, but we can't. I
It's,
guess that's our
yeah,
journey.
I guess that's it. It's the evolutionary journey. We all have our little steps to take towards greater love for ourselves, actually,
Yeah.
true, deep
And
love for
great
ourselves.
and greater acceptance.
Mm.
You know, I mean, like love might be too much for people. Let's start with self-acceptance.
True. Break it down a little here.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
but this is so fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Nadine. I really appreciated it.
Oh, this was lovely.
Yeah. Thank you so much.